like, I kind of want to ask about like the window breaking open and the
Sure.
fly line going through, or
Sure.
something specific about the process of like that.
Well, in the previous versions, they had the window open out, which was a particular problem because at one point the wires weaved through the window,
Right.
and they actually flew Kathy in a previous iteration that I didn't design into the window frame because it was locked.
Wow.
So,
Hi, Jesse.
I thought,
Come
well,
sit.
windows mostly open
Pull up
out,
a chair.
so especially to have the hinge on the inside. So that was the change there, and it was nicer in that production. The window opened out, then Peter flew in. And, can't have a lintel, which I always thought was odd, but I did a nice curved shape at the top of the set.
Right.
So it's an interesting show because it's very wing and drop show, which is very old fashioned.
Right.
And then it also.
I saw it at the Marriott Marquis.
Yes, that's the original iteration of it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and then and so it's a box set that becomes wing and drops in other sets. So.
Right. Yeah. It's different. Okay. So the fourth question is, do you see visions?
This is interesting that you asked that because I live in California and everyone thinks that we're like goofy fruit and nut people, but the fact of the matter is now when I work on a play, I wouldn't so much call it visions, but I actually do close my eyes and I can kind of see the set materialize. And that's when I start drawing, is when I know that I can kind of it's almost like walking through rooms that are sort of dark and they come into light, or you kind of see a corner of something and then I kind of imagine. Certainly the pirate ship was that. I knew that the pirate ship had to be not like a Gilbert and Sullivan HMS Pinafore pirate ship. It had to be very muscular and very kind of feel very scary in a way. So the fact was, I kind of envisioned this and then I drew it, and that's how that whole set came to be.
So, and that's the fifth question is, once you see a vision,
Yeah.
as I think most of us in this business do, what's your first couple steps? You mentioned drawing. Like what do
I
you...
always draw thumbnails, and I always try to keep them in scale, and I always put a figure in them so that we understand the scale. And that's just training from school and from NYU and from everywhere. And then I try to have that meeting with the director at the same time where I'm drawing. Like I rarely will do thumbnails and then go see a director. In the case of Peter Pan, I did. But now what I do is I just take blank sheets of paper and I want to listen to what the director has to say. And then I start drawing literally in front of the director and come up with the set pretty quickly in a thumbnail with the director there. And then that, more times than not, becomes the actual set that ultimately is there. It certainly did with Peter Pan. It was just trying to come up with solving problems. And like the design of any musical is not how pretty it is or what it looks like, it's how do you get from one set to the other. So that was the real challenge with Peter Pan. But every set I do now, I do try to trust my inner self more about colors and feelings, and sometimes it's against what the director wants, and you just have to either fight for it or give it up, because the director's always going to win in the end. But I'm pretty persuasive.
Wait, you mentioned changing, going from one set to another on Peter Pan.
Yeah.
Like for instance, we got to go from flying to the island or
Yes,
something, right?
that's right.
Or whatever. So could you talk about just kind of how do you park scenery? How do you solve that problem?
Well, part of it is I don't worry about it at all. I just figure out what's needed to be on stage. It's just like I don't worry about the budget. It's not that I don't know budget numbers, but they buy such different things at different places. And so I just kind of say, okay, this is the set that you need. And you know what the irony is, if you do a really gorgeous set that people love, they kind of find the money for it. But if you're a dick and they don't like the money, they don't like the set, all of a sudden the money evaporates. It's like, oh, we can't afford that. So you try to be early, because being early makes everyone happy, even though it probably doesn't matter whether you're early or late sometimes when they build things. It does. You don't want to be in a rush, but you also want to have enough time that the design can be, that you can form the design, you know what I mean? So, that's the trick. And you have to be not afraid to show whatever you're doing. Like, I don't care who's in the room watching me. I don't care it's not very private. What we do in the theater. It's not like an artist. I'm always, come in, look at what my drawings are, say what you want. I'll argue it if I don't think you're right. I'll take your opinion if I think it's right, and I'll steal your ideas if they're better than mine. That's the way the world works.
That's a fantastic answer. The last question is just simply, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your process?
You know, I think that what I like about my process is it's different on every project. Like if I go with a director who I know can't read a ground plan, I immediately start doing models, because I know that she or he is better looking at models. I try to think about, what does the director need? I was hired on a show where a designer that I much admire came in pretty much to the first and second meeting with a completely designed show, and that's not what the director wanted, and then the designer didn't want to change and he quit. So I was brought in and I just listened. And I think people don't listen anymore. So I think in the process, it's not what you want as a designer. You have to listen, what does the director want? What do the actors need? What does the playwright need? What does the theater need? What is the event? And then you try to do the best job there for all those things. So
That's just great. That's so great.
Well, I hope
John,
this helps.
oh my gosh, this helps people, right? This helps young designers. This helps me. This is awesome.
all right, good.
This is fantastic. And thank you so much. I'm so glad we found the time.
That's fun. Yeah, we found time, and you met Anna, and that's great.
And I did meet Anna. And now
She's
Jesse,
great.
how are you?
Jesse.
Welcome, Jesse and John.
meet you.
Nice to see you. Oh, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry, I just saw your text
No,
as John
not
and I
at all.
were just sort of sitting down. So yeah.
It's very easy to walk over.
Right. Jesse was spot up on Julie Taymor's, which one was the
Midsummer.
Midsummer
great.
recently, and I
How
was
was
the
that show? I heard it was great.
Fantastic.
She's trying to redeem herself after everyone thinking she's such a nutcase.
She's
she is a
done so.
nutcase.
She's certainly not.